This is One on One. Christine Quinn is the City Council Speaker, and she also happens to be, at this time, a candidate for Mayor of the great city of New York. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
Doing great. Last time you joined us was a couple of years ago. And
that's right.
You were not a candidate.
I was not an official candidate then, no.
And just want to repeat, or I always say disclose, but you do have a connection to WNET, but it's not a fiduciary one.
No. That is true. That is true. One of my first jobs in New York was as an administrative assistant to the Friends of Channel 13. So a group of women who did fundraising for Channel 13. And I was the assistant to the staff person, the woman who ran that organization.
And you love Channel 13.
I do.
I just want to get that out of the way.
There you go.
You know what's interesting is, and I had said this to you before we got on the air, we also had the director of the movie Koch on today. We're taping here at our studios, our WNET Tisch studio at Lincoln Center. And there's a part of it with you in there.
Yeah.
It has to do with, you're trying to get passed in the council, city council, the Koch.
We're renaming the bridge, right.
Okay. Which is fascinating. Go find a way to see Koch. There's a part of you in there. So I just want to ask you, Ed Koch, I say Ed Koch, you say?
New York. I mean, he was is synonymous with New York. The other thing I think Ed Koch is synonymous with is the guy who brought us back from literally the brink of bankruptcy and, in essence, total collapse as a city. And it's hard in New York City in 2013 to even think about what it was like then. And when you see some of the images of him in the subways then covered with filth and graffiti, it's hard to remember. But he really did. The city was that bleak. And he was, and why it's so great, a bridge is named after him versus a street. He was that bridge that brought us back. And people might say, well, what were the exact policies and how did he do it? He was a force of nature. That's how he did it. He just, through the enormity of his personality, the enormity of his love for New York, he just made it happen.
Christine, did he change what the job forever would be?
You know, I think Ed Koch changed what the job of mayor would be, and I think he changed to some degree the standard by which it's judged.
Talk about that.
Well, he did it 24/7. It was him. You know what I mean? His book was called Mayor. Well, one of his books was called Mayor because it was all together. So any idea that you could be the mayor from, 9 to 7 or 8 to 7 or something like that, he took that away. I mean, you have to now be all in as mayor. And I think Ed Koch was the one who set that standard in a way that is now never to be removed. And he also was so kind of out there, so kind of engaged with people, so wanting to hear, how am I doing, directly from New Yorkers. That, I think, in a great way, empowered New Yorkers to feel greater ownership over the mayor of this city. And that's an amazing thing for our city and our democracy. And
sometimes, particularly in that movie, they told him, which is hard to hear, particularly as he ran for that 4th term. So in that spirit.
Yes, they did tell him.
Yeah, it was hard to hear.
Yeah.
And so in that spirit of how you doing, or how am I doing, when you're out there and you make this transition or try to make this transition, what is the biggest transition from being the speaker of this legislative body to this idea of trying to become the chief executive of this extraordinary and complex city?
Well, one of the transitions I struggle with a little is, I'm so now, after 7.5 years, used to being the speaker, I want to respond to what New Yorkers say with an immediate solution. We used to say when we were planning my State of the City speeches, what's 12-monthable? We need to deliver. I didn't want to give speeches that were platitudes. I wanted 12-monthable. So when I stood up again and gave a speech, I could say what I had delivered. But when you're running for mayor, you need to put out vision and you need to talk a little bit more long term. And that's hard because I want to be able to say to somebody, when I saw you last week, you told me X, and here it is, it's done. Because I'm really obsessed with follow-up and all of that. But when you're running not for re-election, but for a new position that's a higher level, you have to go through a little bit of an evolution there and recognize that some things are not 12-monthable. They're, in fact, within the power of the mayor, not the speaker, and we can only really solve when we get to that point. But the great thing is, New Yorkers want to engage. So we launched recently, officially declared my campaign, and we're doing a little bit of a different kind of a thing in the campaign. We're doing these walk and talk tours. So the day I declared, we kicked off Walk and Talk with Chris, and I went to 5 different neighborhoods, 1 in each borough, and walked and talked with New Yorkers. And they came up and they told me they were worried about, to quote Mr. Cobb in Bed-Stuy, the social ills plaguing young men in his neighborhood. A mom told me she was sick of the Department of Education being so adversarial against her daughter who has autism. A vendor told me he was thrilled we'd reduce the fines, but worried about work. People are really engaged, and they want to have conversations, and they want their government to be about responding to their real-life concerns.
When you were out there, victims of Hurricane Sandy, you met as well.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Staten Island, Queens.
Yep.
Breezy Point. Talk about some of that.
So both in my work right after Sandy and then in these walk and talk tours, I'm hearing from people who've been impacted by Sandy. People who've lost family members in the storm, people who lost their homes in the storm, people who've seen their neighborhoods devastated. And what they really want now is a couple of things. I mean, one, they want not to be forgotten. There's thousands of people still in Queens, unfortunately, without full power and electricity, about 2,000 as I understand it. They don't want to be forgotten. They also want clarity. What do I need to do now? Do I need to raise my home higher? Can my home get bought out? Is it better for me not to go back? They want to understand that in a way so that they can plan for their lives most clearly. I was out in a neighborhood in Staten Island. That neighborhood was devastated, devastated. And most of the people in that neighborhood have decided they don't want to go back. They're not looking to make a lot of money. Well,
are they leaving the island?
No. Not one of them. They don't want to go back to their homes.
Oh, okay.
Because their homes were on a wetland, basically. And they realize it's better for all of us if we buy their homes out and we make that part of their neighborhood an addition to the blue belt that was going to get built, an addition to the park, to create a natural barrier against the next storm. All of them were staying on Staten Island. Trust me, you couldn't pry them off Staten Island.
Right.
That was the good thing of it, but they really advocated for themselves. They did a petition. They sent it to me, to the mayor, to the governor, and said, make this part of a FEMA buyout program. And they saw why that was smart for themselves and also for the island. You know, and people really want us to move forward with the idea of a network of barriers that will harden the exterior of New York. Some of those will be man-made, some of them won't. There'll be oyster beds, there'll be parks, there'll be blue belts, but people really want that to happen. We've also passed legislation in the council around how homes get elevated. Because what we saw in New Orleans and Katrina, when the FEMA did new flood maps and people had to elevate their homes, literally lift them up, nobody regulated it. People got ripped off. So in terms
of the cost,
no one regulated who could do it, the quality of the work, who was authorized to do it, how much it should cost. We had stories of construction workers have houses literally falling in on them.
How are you regulating that now for people who are having to deal with that issue?
So we passed legislation that requires a particular certification process for the plans through the Department of Buildings, requires the Department of Buildings to do spot checks on the elevation work, really to make sure that the work is being done correctly. And the folks in New Orleans were really helpful in giving us information so we don't recreate the same mistakes that they made.
Beyond the public policy questions, beyond these very complex, difficult environmental issues and really public safety issues and people suffering from Sandy, the historic nature of this situation, how much do you think about all the talk about the potential for you being the first woman, the first openly gay candidate who has a shot at becoming mayor? Do you think much about that, or you just go about your business?
You know, I don't really think much about it because being openly LGBT, being a woman, it's just who I am. You know what I mean? And like anybody, you get up and you go about your day and you do your work. And
describe your typical day.
Oh, that's one of the great things for me is there is no typical day. But
hold on, can I share that I know on the weekends you have a tough exercise routine?
We do. Kim and I started spinning.
We talked about this. Did we not share this?
We did.
And Kim, your wife?
Kim, my wife Kim, we started doing spinning classes.
You love spinning?
I do.
Can we tell people, my staff doesn't believe this, the toughest exercise around, spinning?
Absolutely. You are drenched.
Yes.
You're exhausted. Every muscle in your body hurts. It was funny that the weekend we kicked off the walk and talk, I went spinning that Friday, and I was walking the dog Saturday morning, and I was like, oh, this was a mistake. I can't move my leg.
And by the way, I told you when I saw you at the Springsteen concert, right? I told you I happen to call it cycling.
Right.
I do not call it spinning.
Right, I call it spinning.
Okay.
Yeah. And the good thing about spinning or cycling, is the music is loud, so when you're screaming in pain, nobody can necessarily hear you.
But it's very tough. Go ahead. So that's your weekend.
That's my weekend.
But you also you're still out there doing politics.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, you might be at a parade, you might be at a street fair, a community meeting, a forum, and also we still have the work of the city council and the government. But, I don't wake up and think, I'm the first woman speaker. I'm the first.
Do not think that.
No, but then you'll have something happen where a mother will rush up with their daughter and they'll say, can I take a picture? I want her to have a picture with you. Or I've had where I've been at events where I've given speeches about the importance of LGBT issues and moving forward, not just for ourselves as LGBT adults, but so children who are in positions where they can't talk about their sexual orientation see somebody on TV or see something happen. And I had a man come up to me once and say, I was that kid. I was that kid who was thinking of killing himself. And I saw, it wasn't me, but so-and-so on TV. And it saved me. And you're reminded that you're part of something bigger, which I think it's good not to think about it all the time because you get a little kind of bogged down in it and maybe it makes you too cautious if you're too worried. But it's good to be reminded that you're in something bigger than just yourself.
And the couple of minutes we have left, you have an interesting relationship with Mayor Bloomberg.
It's productive. Which the sad part is that's interesting in government and politics nowadays.
It's productive.
Yep.
Describe what that means.
Well, we get things done. And, look, when I got elected speaker, I decided the mayor and I would have a productive working relationship. Why? Because to get things done for New Yorkers, you need the executive and the chief legislator to work together. Look what happens in Washington when the Speaker of the House...
Look what doesn't happen in Washington, right?
Speaker of the House and the President are unable to work together, nothing happens. Now, look, the mayor and I aren't going to always agree. But we decided from day one we would try to agree, and when we couldn't, we would disagree agreeably. There is no other field in the world where the top two people are allowed to fight, and it's okay.
So everybody looking to see where does she have a problem with the mayor? Let's see where Christine Quinn has a problem with the mayor. What is that supposed to show us about you?
Exactly. Exactly. Look, I try with everyone I work with, advocates, my colleagues in the council, the mayor, to find consensus, to find points of commonality, because that's how you move things forward. But when you can't, Mayor and I have a disagreement on homeless issues. We couldn't agree. I felt it was very important. I took him to court. We won in court.
Right.
That happens sometimes, but you can't get lost in it. You have to move on.
Listen, I want to thank you for joining us here. Let me just say that you've done well since your first job at WNET. On behalf of our president, WNET, Neil Shapiro, we thank you for joining us here at our studio.
Thank you.
And just promise you she'll come back.
It's a date.
One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation, celebrating 25 years of broadcast excellence in partnership with St. Joseph's Healthcare System. Funding has been provided by Hackensack University Health Network, Sun National Bank, New Jersey Natural Gas, United Water, County College of Morris, the Merck Company Foundation, and by Fedway Associates, Inc. Transportation provided by Airbrook Limousine, serving the metropolitan New York, New Jersey area.